Eleanor,
Eleanor,
come on in.
come on in.
Hi, Eleanor.
Hi, Eleanor.
I'm Michael.
I'm Michael.
How are you
How are
today?
you today?
I'm great.
I'm great. Thanks for asking.
Oh,
Oh,
one question.
Where am
Where
I?
am I? Who are
Who are
you
you
and what's going on?
Right.
Right.
So, you, Eleanor Shellstrop, are dead. Your life on Earth has ended. And you are now in the next phase of your existence in the universe.
Cool.
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 I
I
have some
have some
questions.
questions.
Thought you might.
How did I die?
I don't
I don't
remember.
Yes. In cases
of
of
traumatic
or
or
embarrassing
embarrassing
deaths,
deaths,
we erase the memory to allow for peaceful
peaceful
transition. Are you
Are
sure
you
you want to
want to
hear?
hear?
All right. So
Alright,
you were in a
grocery
grocery store parking lot. You dropped a bottle of something called Lonely Gal Margarita Mix for one. And when you bent down to pick it up, a long column of shopping carts that were being returned to the shopping cart collection area rolled out of control and plowed right into you.
That's how I died.
No, sorry, there's more. You were able to grab onto the front of the column of shopping carts, but it swept you right out into the street where you were struck and killed by a mobile billboard truck advertising an erectile dysfunction pill called Engorgulate. Funnily enough, the first EMT to arrive was an ex-boyfriend.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
So who was right?
Who
I mean,
is
about
right? I mean,
all
about
of this.
all
Well,
of this.
Hindus,
Well, let's see. Hindus,
are a little bit right,
a little bit
Muslims
right,
a little
Muslims
bit,
a little bit,
Jews, Christians, Buddhists, every religion guessed about 5%, except for Doug for a second.
Who's Doug Forsyth?
Well, Doug was a stoner kid who lived in Calgary. Doug was a stoner kid who lived in Calgary during the 1970s. One night he got really high on mushrooms, and his best friend Randy. One night he got really high on mushrooms, and his best friend Randy said, "Hey, what do you think happens after we die?" And Doug just, "Hey, what do you think happens after we die?" And Doug just launched into this long monologue where he got like 90. And Doug just launched into this long monologue where he got like 92% correct. And Doug just launched into this long monologue where he got like 92. And Doug just launched into this long monologue where he got like 92% correct. I mean, we couldn't believe what we were hearing. That's him. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. That's him, actually. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. That's him, actually, right up there. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. That's where he got like 92% correct. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. That's him, actually, right up there.
That's him actually right
He's
up
pretty
there.
famous around
He's
here.
pretty famous around
I'm very
here.
lucky to have
I'm very
that.
lucky to have that.
So, maybe my biggest question.
Maybe my biggest question. Am I?
I mean, is this or
Well, it's not the heaven or hell idea that you were raised on. But generally speaking, in the afterlife, there's a good place, and there's a bad place.
There's a bad place.
You're in the good place. You're okay.
You're okay, Eleanor.
You're in the good
place.
well, that's good.
That's good.
Sure
it
is.
is.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's take a walk, shall we?
Let's take a walk, shall we?
Oh,
Did I have a purse?
No,
No,
I'm dead.
I'm dead. Right. Okay. Mhm.
So this is how it works.
So this is how it works.
The good place is divided into distinct neighborhoods.
The good place is divided into distinct.
So this is how it works. The good place is divided into distinct neighborhoods. The good place is divided into distinct neighborhoods. The good place is divided into distinct neighborhoods. Each one contains exactly 322 people who have been perfectly selected to blend together into a blissful, harmonic balance.
Do all the neighborhoods look like this?
No, every neighborhood is unique. Some have warm.
Do all the neighborhoods look like this?
No, every neighborhood is unique. Some have warm weather, some cold, some cities, some farmland. But in each one, every blade of grass, every ladybug, every detail has been precisely designed and calibrated. Every ladybug, every detail has been precisely designed and calibrated. Every ladybug, every detail has been precisely designed and calibrated for its residence.
There's a
voicelessness.
lot of frozen yogurt places.
Been precisely designed and calibrated. Every
Every
ladybird,
ladybird,
every
lady
detail has been
every
precisely every
every
ladybird,
ladybird,
every
every
detail
detail
has been precisely designed and calibrated for its residence.
for its
There's a lot.
Been
residence.
precisely designed and calibrated. Every
Every
ladybird,
ladybird,
every
every
detail
detail
has been
has been
precisely
precisely
designed and
and
calibrated
calibrated
for
for
its
its
residence.
residence.
There's a lot of frozen
There's a
yogurt
lot of
places.
frozen yogurt
Yeah,
places.
that's the one thing we put in
That's
all the
one thing
neighborhoods.
we put in
People
all
love the one thing we put in all the neighborhoods.
put in
People
all
love
the
the one
neighborhoods.
thing we put in all the neighborhoods. People, the one thing we put in all the neighborhoods. The one thing we put in all the neighborhoods. People,
It's one
the one thing we put in all the neighborhoods. The one thing we put in all the neighborhoods. The one thing we put in all the neighborhoods. The one thing we put in all the neighborhoods. The one thing we, yeah, that's the one thing we put in all the neighborhoods. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one
That's
thing
one
we
thing
put in
I
all
put
the
in all the
neighborhoods.
neighborhoods.
The one thing,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one thing
One
we put
thing
in
I
all
put
the
in all the
neighborhoods.
neighborhoods.
People, the one thing we
One
put
thing
in
we
all
put
the
in all the
neighborhoods.
neighborhoods.
The one thing we
What
put
do
in all
we
the
put in all the neighborhoods. Hoods. Yeah. That's one thing we put in all the neighborhoods.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one
That's
thing we
one thing
put
we
in all
put
the
in all the
neighborhoods.
neighborhoods.
People love frozen
People
yogurt.
love
I don't
frozen
know what to tell
yogurt.
you.
I don't know what to
People
tell
love
you.
frozen yogurt. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know what to tell you.
People love
They want
frozen yogurt.
frozen yogurt.
I don't know what to
I don't
tell
know what
you.
to tell you.
You're going to have a million more
You're gonna
questions. I know.
have a million.
Right now, you're going to have a
You're gonna
million
have a
more
million
questions. I know. Right, you're going to have a
You're gonna
million
have a
more
million
questions. I know. People love frozen yogurt. I don't know what to
I don't
tell
know what to
you.
tell you.
You're going to have a
You're gonna
million
have
more
million
questions. I know. You're going to have a
You're gonna
million
have a
more
mil.
questions.
You're gonna have a million more questions. I know.
You're going to
You're
have a
gonna have a
million more
million
questions. I know. You're going to have a
You're gonna
million
have
more
a million more
questions.
questions.
I
I
know.
know.
Right, you're going to have a
You're gonna
million
have a
more
million more
questions.
questions. I know.
Right now,
Right
better
now,
grab a seat. Movies
better
about to
grab a
begin.
seat. Movie's about. Movie's about
Movies
to
about to
begin.
begin.
Movie's about to begin.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
And welcome to your first day in the afterlife. And welcome to your first day in the afterlife. You were all,
You were
simply put, you were all, simply
simply
put,
put,
good people.
good people.
But how do we know
how
that
do
you
we
were
know
good?
that
How
you
are we
were
sure? But how do we
How
know
do
that
we
you were
know?
good? But
But
how do we know that you were
that
good?
we're
How are we
How
sure?
How are we sure?
During your time on Earth,
During your time
every
on
one of your
Earth,
actions
every
had
one
a
of your
positive
action
or a
has
negative
a
value,
positive or
depending on
negative
how much
value,
good or bad
depending
that
how much
action
good or
put in.
bad,
Depending on how much good or bad that, depending on how
depending
much
how much-
good or bad, depending on
depending on how much good or bad
that action, depending on how
Depending
much
on-
good or bad, depending on
depending
how much good or bad that action put into the universe.
put
Every
into the
sandwich you
universe.
ate,
Every sandwich
every
you
time you
ate,
bought a magazine,
Every time
every single thing, every sandwich you
sandwich
ate,
you ate,
every time you bought a magazine,
bought a magazine. Every time you bought a magazine,
every
every
sandwich you ate,
you ate,
every time
every
you bought
time
a
you bought a
magazine,
magazine,
every
every
single
single
thing you did
had
had an effect
an
that
had an
rippled
effect
out over
that
time
rippled
and
out,
ultimately had an effect
had an effect
that rippled out over time and ultimately had an effect
effect
that rippled out over time
rippled out over time, rippled out over time,
had an effect that rippled out over time and
time,
ultimately created some amount of good
and ultimately created some amount of good,
and ultimately created some amount of good
some amount of good, some amount of good, some amount of some amount of good, some amount of good, some amount of some amount of good, some amount of good. Ultimately, ultimately, ultimate, ultimately, created some amount of good, some amount of good, some amount of good, some amount of good, some amount of good or bad.
and ultimately created some amount of good and ultimately created some amount of good or bad.
Or bad.
You know how some people
You know
pull
how
into the
some
breakdown
people
lane
put
when there's
in the
traffic
breakdown
and they think to
lane.
themselves, you know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's
You know how people You know how some people pulling on the pulling on the breakdown lane when there's a traffic. When there's pulling on the breakdown when there's traffic.
You know how some
Yeah.
people pull. You know how
You
some
know
people
some
pull
people
into the
pulling on
breakdown
the
lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the
pulling on the
breakdown lane when there's
breakdown
traffic?
when there's a traffic, when there's a traffic. You know how some people pulling on the breakdown when there's a traffic,
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic?
when there's
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic
when there's traffic.
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic?
Pulling on the breakdown when there's a traffic. You know how some people pulling on the breakdown when there's a traffic, when there's a traffic, pulling on the breakdown when there's a traffic, pulling on the breakdown when there's a traffic.
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic
When
there's traffic?
when there's traffic, when there's traffic.
Lane when there's traffic, 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 lane when
Lavender, lavender,
lane when there's traffic, lane when there's traffic,
lavender's traffic, lavender, lavender's when lavender's traffic, lavender's when lavender's traffic, lavender's
lane when there's traffic, lane when there's traffic,
when there's traffic, when there's traffic, when there's traffic, when there's traffic, when there's traffic, when there's traffic, breakdown when there's traffic, breakdown when there's traffic, breakdown when there's traffic.
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic?
You know how some people putting on the breakdown when there's traffic, 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 when there's traffic. You know how some people put it on the breakdown when there's traffic?
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic? You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic?
You know how some people pulling in the breakdown when there's traffic? When there's traffic? Breakdown when there's traffic? Breakdown when there's traffic? Breakdown when there's traffic? Breakdown when there's traffic?
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic and they think to themselves,
and they think to themselves.
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic?
When there's a traffic, when there's a when there's a traffic, when there's a traffic, when there's a traffic. You know how some people put on the breakdown when there's a traffic?
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic and they think to themselves, who cares? No. And they think to themselves,
think to themselves. They think to themselves. And they think to themselves.
And they
And
think to themselves.
Think to themselves. Selves. They think to
And they
themselves.
think to
They
themselves. And they
And
think to
they
themselves.
think to
Who
themselves.
cares? No one's
I
watching.
don't care. No one's watching.
We were watching.
We were
Surprise.
watching. Surprise.
Had an effect. Had an effect that
living-
rippled out. Had an effect
Had an
that
effect.
had an
Had
effect
an
that
effect that
rippled out over
time.
time, and ultimately
And
created some amount of good, and ultimately created some amount of good or bad. You know how some
You know
people
how
pull
some
into the
people
breakdown
pull into
lane
the
when there's
breakdown
traffic,
lane
and
when
they
the-
think to themselves,
when
lane when
they're-
there's
when there's when
You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic, lane when there's traffic, lane when there's traffic, lane when there's traffic, lane when there's traffic.
traffic. You know how some people pull in the breakdown lane when there's
Lane when
some
there's traffic, lane when 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 there's traffic.
there's traffic. When there's some traffic, when there's some traffic, when there's some traffic, when there's a 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 traffic, breakdown lane, then there's a traffic.
You know how some
You know
people
how some
pull into
people
the
pull in
breakdown
the
lane when there's
breakdown lane, there's
traffic,
a
and they
traffic.
think to them lane when there's traffic, and
Lanes a traffic, lanes a traffic, lanes a traffic, lanes a traffic, lanes a lanes a lanes a land is a traffic, land is a traffic, land is a traffic.
you know how some
You know how
people
some
pull into
people
the
pull in
breakdown
the
lane when there's
breakdown lane,
traffic,
there's a
and they
traffic.
think lane. You know how some
You know how
people
some
pull into
people
the
pull in the
breakdown lane when
breakdown
there's
lane, there's a
traffic, and they
traffic.
think to themselves, who cares?
They-
No one's watching. And they think to
And they think
themselves,
to
who
themselves-
cares? And they think to
and-
themselves, and they think
and
to
they think to
themselves,
themselves,
who cares?
who
No one's
cares?
watching.
No one's watching.
We were watching.
Who cares?
And ultimately created some amount of good or bad. And ultimately created some amount of good or bad. You know how some people
You know how some people
You know how
You know
some
how
people
some
pull into
people
the
pull in
breakdown
the
lane when there's
breakdown lane,
traffic? You know how some
You know how
people
some
pull into the
people pull in
breakdown
the
lane when there's
breakdown lane,
traffic,
there's
and they
traffic,
think to themselves,
and they
who
think to
cares?
themselves,
No one's
who
watching.
care? No
We
one's
were
watching. We were watching. Surprise!
Anyway, when
Anyway,
your time on earth has ended,
when your time
we
on earth
calculate.
is ended,
When your
Anyway.
time on earth has ended,
when your time on earth has ended,
when your time on earth has ended. Anyway,
anyway,
when your
when
time
your
on earth
time
has
on
ended. Anyway,
Anyway,
when your
when
time
your
on earth
time
has
on
ended,
earth has
we
ended,
calculate the
we
total
calculate
value
the
of your
total
life
value
using
of
our
your life
perfectly
using
accurate
a
measuring
perfectly
system.
accurate
Only the
measuring
people with the
system.
very
Only
highest
the people
scores, the
with the
true
very
cream of the
high
crop,
scores,
get to come. Only the people
only the
with the
people
very
with the very
highest
high
scores,
score,
the true cream of the. Only the people
only
with
the
the
people
very
with
highest
very
scores, the
highest
true cream of the crop,
scores,
get to come
the
here
true
to the good
cream
place.
of the
The
crop,
true cream of the crop.
the true cream of the crop, cream of the crop, the true cream of the crop.